Walkie Talkies. They may seem like old tech for some of you, but for many outdoor enthusiasts, they are still a staple piece of gear. But which one is best? Today we're going to look at 15 different models. We have been testing most of these for the better part of 2 years, but in this episode I'm going to share everything that we found, so hopefully you can choose the best one that's going to work for you. We purchased all of these walkie-talkies with our own money, and we selected them based on what the most popular models are for outdoor enthusiasts and recreationists. So whether you're a hiker, a hunter, a skier, or an angler, one of these walkie-talkies will probably work well for you. Now let me introduce you to the candidates.
Gear up and get outside.
This is the Walkie Talkie mountain radio. It costs $110 each, so $110 for one radio, and what you get is the walkie-talkie, the carabiner, an additional tether to be able to leash it to yourself, and a charger. This is the Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio. It costs $180 for one radio, and it comes with the radio, the leash, just like the mountain radio, as well as a charger. It doesn't have a carabiner, instead it has a clip, but the carabiner is an optional accessory. This is the Backcountry Access BC Link Mini radio. It comes with the walkie-talkie itself, then it has a Velcro strap and a belt clip, as well as a USB cable, and these two clips that facilitate the attachments. This is the Midland GXT 1050 VP4 Extra Talk two-way radio. That is a mouthful, but it comes with a lot of stuff. Two radios, both of which have a belt clip. It comes with a docking charger, an AC adapter, and what's not pictured here because I don't know where it's at yet are two headsets and I believe a car charger as well. One thing that should be said about this little guy too is that there's the companion to it, the Midland GXT 1000 VP4 or whatever it is, just there's no 50 in it. And the only difference between these two radios is a couple of features. This camo one is obviously the hunting version, but that's almost the only thing that's different about it. These are functionally the same radio. These are sold in pairs for about $100 normally. Here is the Motorola Talkabout T800. The latest version of this is the T803, and they look and feel exactly the same. The only thing that is different is that the T803 will have gray buttons instead of black, and it will have a USB-C charger instead of a micro USB. Besides that, they are functionally the same. When you buy a package for $150, you get two radios and a charger, and then some little sticker labels. They also both come with a belt clip. This is the Motorola T600 H2O radio set. These walkie-talkies are fully waterproof. They're typically sold in a pair for $135, and they come with two radios, belt clips, and a charger. But you can get this T605 package that also adds a car charger and a nice big case. Otherwise, the T600 and the T605 are the exact same walkie-talkie. The Cobra MicroTalk ACXT345 is a 2-pack of radios with belt clips, a dock, and a charger that I have lost. It sells for $50 for a pair. A slightly heavier duty option from Cobra is the Cobra RX680. This is also sold in a 2-pack for $90 and comes with two radios, each with a belt clip, a dock, and again a charger that I have lost. The DeWalt DX-FRS 800 has made a name for itself even in the outdoor world, not just at the tool store. Normally, that comes as a 2-pack, but my friend took one. A 2-pack sells for $150 and includes the radio, these holsters, and a dock, as well as a charger, also stolen by a friend. Some friend that is. The Backcountry Access BC Link 2.0 is the most expensive radio on our list at $190 each. It comes with just the radio, also this nice lapel mic, and a charger, which isn't pictured. Now getting into our budget walkie-talkies, we have the Midland X-Talker T10. This is only $30 for a pair. They use alkaline batteries, so all it comes with is these belt clips. Next up you have the Retevis RT22. As a 2-pack it costs $40. It comes with two of these belt clip holsters and a charger. But I bought mine in a 4-pack and they have even bigger packs than that. Next on our list of cheap radios is the Motorola Talkabout T110. These sell for $50 a pair, but usually you can find them for cheaper than that. Like the Midlands, they only come with a belt clip. Last and probably least is the MOICO walkie-talkies. These are an Amazon special. You can find them for as cheap as 18 bucks, but normally they're about $30 a pair. Like the other walkie-talkies, they just come with the cheap radios themselves and a belt clip. Oh wait, I forgot this guy that no one should buy. This is the Walker's Razor. It costs $50 for one, and for reasons I'll get into later, I wouldn't recommend anybody buy it. It's kind of a piece of junk. It's designed to work with ear protection for shooters and maybe hunters, although I never like to hunt with stuff like this on my head. So it really is a one-trick pony. Before we get too deep into this, let me show you the specs. Here's a table of some of the specs that interest people the most. Feel free to pause your screen and study it if you want. I also want to take a moment to give a shout out to Ver Watches. Ver has decided to be an ongoing sponsor of Outdoor Empire, which helps us do what we do. It costs a lot of money to buy gear and to review it, and so sponsors like Ver help us keep this going. Ver makes some really cool field watches. Now, I haven't been a big watch person myself, so I'm not super deep into this, but this is their C5 Tactical that I've been wearing, and I've really been enjoying it. It's just a quality watch. It's assembled in the USA, which I certainly appreciate, and I'm sure a lot of you do too. And it's a great all-around watch. I'm not really big into smartwatches. I don't want to have a phone on my wrist all the time, but I do like the idea of being able to tell the time and also having big numbers that glow in the dark super well. There will be a link in the description below if you want to check out Ver's selection of field watches. When you're using a walkie-talkie outdoors, size and weight and portability are important. Here they are lined up from the lightest weight to the heaviest among these walkie-talkies. If bulk is more important to you, then here is how I'd rank them from left being the smallest and most compact, the bulkiest on the right. But perhaps the most important thing when it comes to portability, especially if you're hiking around or skiing in the backcountry, is how well it attaches to your pack or your stuff or your person. And that's where the Walkie Talkie radios really shine. The Walkie Talkie mountain radio has this carabiner clip, which makes it really easy to just clip it on something like that. And then it even has a leash. So you can attach that leash somewhere else on another loop or strap somewhere. And if you drop it, it's still by your side. That is one of the best features of the Walkie Talkie mountain radio, and I think it's one of the reasons it's so popular among outdoorsy people. And the Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio kind of takes that up a notch even. It has this metal alligator clip. That is a really sturdy clip. It pivots around and it locks in different positions at different angles. So that makes it very nice to just clip on any strap like that. There are often more places that you can clip a radio than there are where you can carabiner a radio if you don't have loops everywhere. I've had that happen even on like jackets. Backcountry Access has also thought a lot about this, and that's one of the reasons they're so popular among backcountry skiers. Their Smart Mic has an alligator clip that's also metal, so that is great. It's just like the Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio to clip anywhere on your strap. And then this is designed or meant to go inside your pack, off your body, and it has a decent plastic spring-loaded clip as well. So even if you did want to have this on your person, you've got plenty of options for that too. The newer Backcountry Access Link Mini radio also has two options. The plastic spring-loaded clip it comes with is decent by itself, and it's got a little hook, so it's probably not going to come loose, but if it does, it also has a little carabiner tether. This is not as heavy duty or stout as the Walkie Talkie ones, but it'll do the job to keep your radio on your body. And at no additional cost, they even include this little Velcro strap. It's not the sleekest design, but it does a job where you can actually just Velcro it right around a backpack strap. Walkie Talkie and Backcountry Access have hands down the best portability, but when it comes to the worst for attaching to your pack or somewhere, it's probably got to be this DeWalt. A buddy of mine, Alex, who writes a lot of gear reviews on Outdoor Empire, is the one that reviewed this in the first place, and he took it on a river trip and camping, and he just hated how terribly it stayed on his person. I'd rather stick this in my jeans pocket than try to strap it in this thing on my pack. The Cobras and the MOICO also have pretty abysmal belt clips. So when it comes to portability, the ones at the top are the best, led by Walkie Talkie, then Backcountry Access. That Midland isn't too bad either. These are kind of par for the course. Now the important part, range. In a perfect testing environment, almost all of these radios could probably range out to 20 or 30 miles or farther, but that is never the case in the real world. A reasonable expectation is somewhere between a half mile and 2 miles of range. If you're in the woods doing your thing, it could be a little longer, it could be a lot shorter. Nonetheless, we attempted to test this over the last year and a half or so by doing a number of different things. I tested this once when I was camping in the woods, and I took most of these walkie-talkies out at half-mile increments farther and farther and called back to camp until I couldn't communicate anymore. Do you copy on the Black Midland?
Can you hear me presently?
Presently, I am hearing you.
When Alex was testing these, he did a similar test, but in his own way and in his neighborhood, testing both line of sight and also the range with obstructions in between him and the person he was communicating with. Besides that, Alex and I have both used most or all of these radios in the real outdoor world, whether it be hiking, camping, rafting, fishing, hunting, or doing a number of other activities. Based on our experience and these tests, this is how I would rank these walkie-talkies from the shortest or weakest range to the best range. This table shows an example of one of the tests that Alex did just with the 4 cheap walkie-talkies on this table. The ones that perform as you would expect for an outdoor radio would be these here. The two that had the best range, as you might expect, were the GMRS radios because they can transmit at a higher output. For all of these radios, if they're on any channels between 8 and 14, they're only going to transmit at a maximum of a half a watt, although some of these cheaper ones don't even transmit at that power. But when you get into the other channels between 1 and 7 or 15 and 22, FRS radios can transmit up to a maximum of 2 watts if the radio allows it. Remember that spec chart I showed? You can go back and look at that and see what the maximum output is. A radio like the BCA is going to output at 2 watts on those channels, but a radio like the Midland GXT or the Walkie Talkie 5 watt are going to output at 5 watts on those channels. And that just gives them the ability to have a much greater range and go through more difficult terrain. Between these two though, the Walkie Talkie has even more capacity to range farther for a couple of reasons. One, it has a removable antenna. FRS radios cannot have removable antennas. GMRS can. The Midland does not. It has a fixed antenna. But on this Walkie Talkie, you can actually swap this antenna out for something like this whip antenna, which is larger. They even have a vehicle antenna kit. So you can put a different antenna on it that can extend your range. But what's more is you can connect this to repeaters. I'm not going to get into that, but in the way most people are going to use this, you can consistently get a couple of miles out of it. In fact, I gave a couple of these to a buddy who wanted to use them for fishing, kayak fishing, between he and a friend when they were on the river. They tried the regular Walkie Talkie, they tried the Motorola T600, and then they tried this. They gave me the others back, and hands down, this was their favorite. If long range is important to you, the Walkie Talkie 5 watt is your pick. When it comes to ease of use, this is how I would line them up, from easiest on the left to hardest on the right. Now, it's not that any of these are particularly difficult to use, but it makes sense that the cheapest with the fewest amount of features are the easiest to use, including that Retevis. It doesn't even have a screen. And
Power on. 3.
It talks at you when you go through the commands
4.
or
5.
change channels,
6.
and that makes it pretty easy to know where you're at. And the Walkie Talkie 5 watt radio actually has a lot of stuff it can do, so you are going to need to consult the manual occasionally if you're going to fully utilize all the features that it has. That said, for 90% of what you're going to do with it, it's pretty straightforward, and I really like the interface. But none of this is rocket science, so don't let that hinder you. Here's how we rank the Walkie Talkies for durability, left being the most durable, on the right being the least durable. Comes at no surprise that these here with an IP68 rating, the Walkie Talkie 5 watt radio, the Motorola T800 and the DeWalt are the most durable, also waterproof. They can be submerged. But the Motorola T600 is the only one that floats. Keep that in mind. At least the Walkie Talkie has a tether. That DeWalt sinks like a rock. For what it's worth, we have dropped all of these, not just here in the gravel, but in actual use, and they all still work, even after multiple drops on different types of surfaces. Everything else kind of feels like a toy, but it's still going to bounce and probably will take a decent beating, actually. If we look at our specs table again, you can see in this column the IP ratings. IP stands for ingress protection. The first number is for dust. The second number is for water. The higher the number, the more protected it is from the elements. As far as battery life goes, this is how we would rank them based on the shortest battery life up to the longest. Now, some of these on the cheaper end do use disposable batteries, which is convenient in some ways, but kind of terrible in other ways. You're going to be chewing through a lot of AAA batteries, and that's expensive and obnoxious. By far, the Walkie Talkies do best when it comes to batteries. Something about them, it just consumes less battery power when they're running. They can last for 4 or even 5 days of light, moderate use when you're actually out in the field using them. Occasionally, of course, if you're on them all day long and heavy use, it's going to suck a lot more battery juice, especially on that 5 watt if you're transmitting at 5 watts all the time. Most all of these are probably going to get you through a day of regular use. Pretty much all of these you're probably going to want to charge every night if you can charge them, or at least have backup batteries if you've got to replace them. These radios use exclusively alkaline batteries. In fact, those all use AAAs, either 3 or 4 of them. This group of radios all uses rechargeable batteries, and only rechargeable batteries. You don't have the option to use alkaline batteries. However, with these 4, you can either use the rechargeable batteries that come with the kit, or you can swap out and use alkaline batteries, AA's, if needed, to get by. That's kind of a nice feature if you need backup batteries, but you can't charge in the field. Of these that recharge, most of them will use USB-C chargers. At least the newest ones will, although I have a couple that are a year or 2 old that still have the micro USB chargers. Should also be noted, on a few of these you have the option to swap batteries or buy additional ones, even though they're only rechargeable, like the Walkie Talkie 5 watt radio. The Mountain radio does not have the option of a swappable battery. You cannot swap with the BCAs, you cannot swap with the Retevis. As far as I know, they don't have swappable battery packs for the DeWalt, but I may be mistaken on that. Some of the walkie-talkies with older nickel batteries just take a lot longer to charge as well, like the Midland. These Motorolas don't charge super fast, neither do the Cobras. Here's the lineup when it comes to features. This is where it gets a little subjective because it really comes down to a matter of personal preference and what you want to do with your radio. While some of these lightweight radios don't have a ton of features in them, they may just be right for what you want to do with it if you want to keep it simple. Whereas a Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio can do a whole lot of stuff, but it takes a little know-how, and you're probably not even going to use a lot of the features that it offers. Here's a table of basic features that a lot of these radios offer. Pause your screen if you want to soak it in. In fact, some old school features like Vox, which is a voice activated mic where it'll start transmitting as soon as you start talking, don't really work that well, and most of us don't even use it. But other features like NOAA weather channels can be really useful to some and even expected, and dual channel monitoring is one of those newer ones that can be really handy when you're working in groups or if you're using these professionally like in a search and rescue operation. Alright, so let's go through some of the unique features and pros and cons of each. Starting with the Walkie Talkie Mountain Radio. Besides being so portable and having all those handy clips and just liking the interface, I really like things like the actual display. It kind of blends in behind this plastic piece and it's just really easy to make out. The radio also has a high and low function. I don't know if you can see, but right there it says HL, and right here you can see there's a little H. That means it's in high power mode, which means except for those low power channels, it's going to transmit at 2 watts instead of half a watt. But if you need to conserve battery, you can go hold that down. The keypad lock is on. That's very handy to have on. There we go. Now the keypad lock is off. You hold that down, and you'll see now there is an L, and that indicates it's in low power mode. That will help conserve battery if you need to. The other great thing about the Walkie Talkie is there's lots of accessories available for it, including a lapel mic. You can buy that separately if you want it. Some of the pros of this are just that it's a really well-made radio. It functions, it does all the basic stuff you need to do, without any of the really fancy stuff. It's simple, easy to use, and we really like the small, compact size. A couple of things we don't like about it though are that it's not fully waterproof, and sometimes water can kind of get in the mic and it'll make it hard for the other person to hear you. I also don't love that it doesn't have the NOAA weather channels. A lot of the cheaper radios, much cheaper radios, have that feature, and while I understand a lot of people that would use this radio probably get their weather reports from another source, that's sort of a basic feature they could have put in there but they didn't. It is kind of expensive, but it's a workhorse, the battery lasts forever, and it just does a really great job. Similar story on the Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio. Now if you want to see all the features and functions and what I really think about this radio, I did a full review. I'll put a link to it here in the corner and then down in the description below. This does all the basics superbly well, and then it has some advanced features for power users. It does have the weather channels built in. It allows you to swap antennas like I showed you, and they even have car and vehicle mounting kits that could make this a very useful radio for work purposes or for overlanders that want all of the gadgets. I love that it's not that much bigger or heavier, but you get a lot more tech inside, and it is fully waterproof. That gator clip is awesome. You never feel like you're going to lose this radio. You can also add a headset to this one if you want. But one really handy feature is that it has dual channel monitoring. So you can actually have 2 channels set to it and you can flip between the 2, but even if you're on one of them, it will still receive messages sent through the other channel. And then you can click a button and it'll flip over to that one. So if you're working in an environment where you need to have communications with 2 different teams, that's one way to do it. And a more sophisticated use of it is that use of repeaters. This is the only radio in this lineup that is able to do that. The Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio has the best range of any walkie-talkie or two-way radio in our lineup today. It's durable, it's waterproof, and it gets the job done, and it has the best-in-class gator clip. And with that gator clip, it gives you the best security to your pack or anywhere else. A couple of the downsides are, though, that you have to have that GMRS license to use it legally, and it's pretty darn expensive. The BCA BC Link Mini is another great option, and it has a couple of things we really like the button size. If you have gloved hands and you want to use this in the winter, this is one of the best for skiing or winter sports because it's just so easy to use with gloves on. Big buttons, not very many of them. That bright yellow color is also going to make it easy to see if you drop it in the snow or someplace. This too has dual channel monitoring, like the Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio, but besides that, it doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles. It doesn't have many of the fancy features. It doesn't even have a lot of the basic features like NOAA weather reports or just channel scanning. It's a nice size, it clips onto your pack well, and it's one of the best for winter sports. While it's easy to set up and use, it's probably not going to have a lot of features that a lot of people want, and it's still pretty expensive at $100. That display is also kind of hard to read compared to some. When it comes to these Midland GXT radios, these are great, reasonably priced radios that have a lot of functionality for the price. They're not the most durable and they're not the toughest, and they're a bit traditional, but they do the job and they do it pretty well. And since they're GMRS, they transmit at a higher power, but still allow you to communicate with other FRS radios. Now, as I said earlier, both of these are really the same radio. The camo version is just camo and it has animal calls on it. Here's the first one, a cougar. You got a duck. That's a crow call, I believe. Yep, for getting a turkey to shock gobble. There you got a wolf call. Use that. And then there's a gobble for a turkey. Then you're back into the other stuff. Now, I don't know if you would ever actually use those in the real world. It's probably just for fun when you're calling your buddies. And in a lot of states, it's illegal to use electronic animal calls, so beware. Probably not something you're going to use to attract a coyote or something, but it's kind of fun for hunters. And whether you go with the black one or the camo one, it does have a lot of great features that hunters would appreciate, including those headsets, which could allow you to have a more silent operation. It also has an SOS button and an SOS siren that it does. Not sure when you'd ever need that, but why not? If you want a walkie-talkie with all the traditional features, plus really good range and clarity, this is a good option at an affordable price. But keep in mind that like the 5-watt radio, this is a GMRS radio, so you have to have a license to use it. The Motorola T800 or T803 is the latest model. It's a really great all-around radio as well. I really like the interface. It's very much like the Walkie Talkie on this one. The buttons are pretty straightforward and easy to figure out, so the actual use of the radio itself isn't too hard, and it has a couple features like a flashlight that are handy sometimes. It also has an SOS and it has a scan feature, and it has a lot more buttons that mean it has dedicated buttons for each use, so it's not as hard to figure out or navigate the menu. However, it also has Bluetooth and can connect to a Bluetooth app where you can actually send messages via text, but not over Wi-Fi or cellular. You can even do it when you don't have a cellular connection, and you can do it through the walkie-talkie radio frequencies. Now, I haven't messed with this feature. Honestly, it's complicated and kind of hard to set up, and really I don't think there's a whole lot of concrete use cases for it. I think we've got other tools to do that job if we want to do that job. But for those of you that like to get into that, that might be an interesting pro for you. The con of that is that it makes it a little more complicated to be able to use all of the features of this walkie-talkie. And while it doesn't have the most powerful output in terms of wattage, even on its highest power, it only transmits at about 0.75 watts. It does have a high and a low setting. There's 2 push-to-talk buttons. The standard would be this low, and that's going to transmit at a lower power. Or if you hit the high, it's going to transmit at a higher power. That's going to suck a little more battery, but this is pretty battery efficient and we really like it overall. So it's going to be a good all-around radio for most people. It's a bit more expensive than those Midlands, but since it comes in a pair, it's quite a bit cheaper than say a Walkie Talkie. It also offers dual channel monitoring, and you can even do push to talk from your phone with the app. And for hunters, some of those tools could allow you some very silent communication, so that's kind of a bonus too. But sort of a good all-around outdoor recreation radio. The downsides are that it's just not excellent at anything. So it's not the best at any one thing, but it's pretty good at everything. The Motorola T600 H2O has a lot of the same features, but a couple extra ones for people who spend a lot of time on the water. Biggest and nicest feature about this is that it is fully waterproof, and it even floats. If it drops in the water, it's going to float, and it even floats face up so you can still hear messages. And once it comes into contact with water, this flashlight on the bottom will begin to flash automatically. It can also be used just as a flashlight. There's white, and there's even a red LED light you can use. Kind of a cool little feature, but it's especially useful if you drop it in the water and you need to be able to find it. The bright green color combined with that flashing light will be very handy. Compare that to the other waterproof radios in this lineup, the Walkie Talkie 5-watt and the DeWalt, which are both going to sink and they're going to be hard to find if you drop them in the lake. Besides that, it has a similar power boost function to the T803. However, I believe this one transmits at a higher wattage. I think it's a full 2 watts when it's on those channels that allow that. You might have to check my chart though. It has some custom call tones and other little things like that, but overall it's not a super fancy or super modern radio. It kind of does all the main stuff you want a walkie-talkie to do, and it does it well, and it's easy to use and easy to figure out and relatively affordable considering the price for a pair. I also find this one to be really crisp and loud, and that's really nice in certain scenarios, especially when you're on the water. The Backcountry Access BC Link 2.0 is a great radio for winter sports, but besides that it's kind of big and cumbersome. And unless you really like a lapel mic, now if you do, this is the radio for you, but if you don't like them, or you don't know if you like them, then it's probably not the best option. It's great for winter sports because you put the receiver in your pack, you hold this out here, That keeps the battery warm too, which keeps it lasting a little bit longer. But more importantly, it's just super easy to operate with a glove. Look at that big button. These dials can also be manipulated with your glove. I like that it has these preset channels right here, and you can actually change what those are preset to, but from the factory, they come set to certain channels and privacy codes. And then the interface itself isn't overly complicated, but it's not the easiest to manipulate either. This is the most expensive radio on our list, and I'm not sure it's worth the price considering the alternatives. However, for certain use cases, this is probably going to be the only one you want. The battery life is pretty standard. You should be able to get through a day, 8 hours with some reasonable use, but maybe even up to a couple of days with light use. It's also earphone compatible if you want to put in some headphones just using a jack that's right here. One feature that some people might love, but it kind of annoyed us, is that it has a low battery beep. After 2 hours of not using it or pushing any buttons at all, it's going to beep at you every 5 seconds or something until you either use it or turn it off and turn it back on. That's sort of annoying, but I guess it's kind of nice if you just forgot to turn it off and you want to while you're not using it to conserve battery. That's the purpose of it. In the cheap radio category, the Midland X-Talker T10 was definitely our top pick. It just performed better than all the others, and it has several of the features that the mid-price radios have and the other cheap radios do not. Things like the weather channels. It even does scanning and monitoring and some of the traditional walkie-talkie functions you might want to have. It had the best clarity and the best range of all the cheap walkie-talkies as well, even out competing some of the mid-range radios. Of all the radios under 50 bucks that we tested, this was by far the best. It does take AAAs, but the battery life is respectable compared to others. If you're just looking for a cheap walkie-talkie or you're looking for some that you can get for your kids but are still actually useful, this is probably the best pick. It's not the most durable, it doesn't have as good a range as the bigger radios, but it'll still take a pretty good beating, and for the price, you can't really complain. The DeWalt is a great radio if you're going to keep it in your pocket, but it's really not the best radio for outdoor recreation. The reason being that it's the most likely to fall off your pack and get lost forever. This clip and this holster is terrible. It's just not functional enough to really be respectable. The button on the front is just weird for the sake of being weird. It's disappointing to people with walkie-talkie muscle memory. It's simple to use, and it's nice that it's rugged and waterproof, but it sinks like a rock. So this is definitely the most likely walkie-talkie to get lost, and maybe that's why I only have one and can't find the other. Probably great for a job site, but I'm not going to take it on a hike or on a boating trip. The two Cobras are just okay. This one is a great price, and so if you're just looking for something inexpensive with a few of the extra traditional features and a rechargeable battery, this is a decent option. But neither of them have impressive range. The clarity is not excellent. They have a lot of the traditional features, and they have a lot of buttons, which can be nice to make it a little bit easier to figure out, although you just got to know what they all do. But the extra money you pay for this one over this one gets you something that feels a little tougher, feels a little more durable, and maybe it is, but it doesn't really function any better. As far as performance goes, these are just a bit lackluster. I'd say the same for the MOICO. It's got a lot of nice features, and it's super cheap. Good toy for the kids, could get you by in a pinch for regular camping stuff or fishing, anything you're going to be pretty close to the people you're trying to talk to. But not my favorite, falls off real easy, just didn't win a lot of marks in our book. The Retevis seemed kind of convenient because it's just so darn easy to use and it's so slender, so if you need to equip a lot of people with a lot of walkie-talkies and you want to keep it simple, this is a decent option. As far as features go, it doesn't have a lot going for it, but just like those old secret Super Nintendo cheat codes, there are a couple things you can do with this, including connecting it to your computer and reprogramming the frequencies. So while it doesn't have privacy codes, you can actually tweak it a little bit in the software to be able to get more privacy if that's what you're looking for. You can also enable Vox that way and a couple other little things. But I was very unimpressed by the range. I appreciate that the batteries are rechargeable, so if you're looking to equip some kids with just some toys or something fun to play with in the yard, these are great because you're not going to burn through AAA batteries like you would with some of those other cheap radios. But for anything beyond really close range stuff where you just want something cheap to equip a lot of people, I'm not going to choose this one. The other cheap one that is worth its way is this Motorola Talkabout T110. This has the same Motorola look and feel and some of the same traditional features, just a super simple interface. It's easy to use, so it's great for kids, but it's pretty functional and has decent range and clarity as well. Not super powerful, so it's not going to have as good a range as the other radios, but in our tests, it did okay out to as far as a mile or so. I just don't see the point with the Walker's Razor Edge. It's $50, which I think is way too expensive for a single radio like this. It is purpose-built, and I can see the allure, the little boom mic. It's supposed to be windproof, but it's got very basic features. If you're a couple of guys at the range and you want to have a chat without messing with your ear protection, That is the only time this makes sense or has any interest, and I don't see why a hunter would want to use this in the field. I simply cannot recommend this as a good option or a good buy. I think it's a waste of money. Here is the final scorecard for our best walkie-talkies roundup. Based on our testing and our experience and all the ways we use these two-way radios, this is how we would rank these walkie-talkies relative to each other. The Outdoor Empire score is simply the average of the other 5 scores. Of all the walkie-talkies, these here are our favorite, and we can't help ourselves, the walkie-talkies really are our favorites. Just a reminder, we paid for all of these walkie-talkies and no company paid to be included in this review. The Walkie Talkie Mountain Radio is really great for all-around outdoor use. It's kind of expensive, but it's a great product. And the 5-watt radio really steps that game up another level. While my preference between the BC Link Mini and the Walkie Talkie Mountain Radio is the Walkie Talkie, if it's only for skiing, this BC Link Mini is probably a better choice simply because it's so easy to use with a gloved hand and it only has the features you need for that. The Motorola T800 series or T803 is great for an all-around radio. If you're going to be on the water, the T600 is an awesome option simply because it floats and it functions well. However, if you're on a river trip and you want better range, especially when you're going through canyons, the Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio is going to outperform the T600. The Midland is an affordable, feature-packed radio that is a great option for hunters who want to have contact and maybe even have a headset in so that everything stays pretty silent. And of course, the best cheap option is this Midland X-Talker T10. I hope you found this video helpful and that one of these walkie-talkies does the job for you. If you're interested in knowing more about that Walkie Talkie 5-watt radio, go watch this video next. I'll also include a link to the detailed review on our website where you can learn even more. Now gear up and get outside.